Should I be working on query prep or actually, you know, working on some revision prep for draft 4? Probably. But am I going to? No, not this weekend anyways. Today we're actually going to sit down, and it's probably going to be a little bit longer of a video and just a lot of chatting. I do have a lot of things written down on my phone here to go over. Basically, we are going to sit here and I'm going to go over the breakdowns of my book. We're going to compare draft 1, 2, and 3. I'm going to read to you the opening lines of each draft and how much that has changed, and, you know, kind of compare that. And then finally, we're going to talk about finding the plot. But before I get into all of that, I should probably tell you who I am if you're new here. Hi, hello, welcome. My name is Araya, and I am currently revising my hunting memoir, which is temporarily titled The Adventures of an Outfitter's Daughter. And I do want to go the traditional route with that, so that's why I've been talking about query prep. And it just encases my journey to try to get my dream black bear alongside my dad, a big game outfitter based in Idaho, and the many highs and lows we face along the way. It's a journey of self-discovery, personal struggles, familiar relationships, and kind of identity, all wrapped up in 22 action-packed hunts. So if that sounds interesting to you and you want to stick around for when that's eventually published, I'm happy to have you here. However, if you just want to watch my writing journey and just my book-related content, that's okay too. I'm happy you are here as well. But today we are going to do something a little bit different, something I haven't really done. We're going to kind of look at my book's journey as a whole over the last few years, and, you know, how everything has changed and how I feel about kind of like each draft and where I am today. First things first, we're gonna go over the draft 1 stats. The word count was 94,334 words, which is a big difference from draft 3. If you are not new to my channel, you know that, but we'll get to that in a second. Draft 1 took from August/September of 2022. I was looking through my photos and videos trying to figure out when I had started, and I was working on the second chapter on September 9th. So I'm assuming I worked on the first chapter a weekend or two before that. However, there's also a whole nother chunk of chapters that was before that, but I don't think I had started that. I have a part 1, part 2, and part 3 in draft 1 that has completely changed from then to now. But yes, the book kind of felt disconnected in a way because it took me so long to figure out what was going on with it. I kept debating back and forth if I wanted to do separate books where one maybe focused more on like my bear stuff, more on like deer hunts. I was just having a hard time figuring out where I was going to take it. Like, there was no plot. I didn't know what it was. I was still trying to figure it out. And I actually hadn't experienced the hunts that are now the conclusion to my current draft. So I think that was a big part of why I didn't have the real plot yet. I was still discovering what was going to occur over the course of the whole book. And so it was just very much a discovery write. I was just writing each chapter, which is each a different hunt. So everything that I had remembered in some like loose, like short story plot lines, I was using for each story, and I was highlighting different lessons that I had learned from each hunt, and I was trying to interconnect it together to show you like my adventures of an outfitter's daughter. The big thing that was throwing me off is that the first chunk, part 1, was my adventures with my dad for like my very first hunt when I was coon hunting with him to right before he bought his business. And so I was like, does this really even apply to this book? Because it's before him being an outfitter. And so I was debating back and forth with that a lot. Then when I cut over to draft 2, it completely changed. So kind of like talk about draft 2 then. So draft 2 ended up coming down to 88,509 words. I had cut out part 1, so I think that was a big chunk of the word count difference there, was that came out. And it took me from September 23rd, 2024 to March 16th, 2025. So that was only 6 months. Draft 1 took almost 2 years. The book felt a lot stronger, and it like was actually starting to feel like a book and not just stories kind of slapped together like an adventure book. And I was calling it a memoir, but also like it's a hunting adventure book. Where the plot still was at that point, it was leaning more towards it being an adventure book, but I was pushing it out as, you know, a memoir. It was these adventures and this experience that I had. At that point, I was still trying to figure it out, and I like had slight inclinations of what it should be, but I didn't want to pull that trigger because it would mean I'd have to still cut a lot out of my book. And then a beta reader read it and pointed that out. It took me a second to really like take it in and like agree with it, but then I finally did and cut all of that out. It was hard, but then once my mind started turning on that new plot idea, I was like going and going and going, and like I was ready to do draft 2 or draft 3, not draft 2 because I just did draft 2 obviously. which means I just like was holding on to those stories that weren't like connecting to the plot line that was really underneath everything, and I was just holding on to them too much, so they just needed to be cut. And then I felt like the stories themselves still needed to be interconnected a little bit better. Like they needed that plot line that I was like coming into to be threaded through all of it, and it wasn't quite there yet. So that moved me into draft 3, which I had started June 28th, 2025 and finished August 24th, 2025. So it took me 57 days. It was just short of 2 months, and it ended out with 67,043 words. Huge cut there. And that was because I cut like 6 chapters out, or was it like 8? I don't know. I should know this. I literally just calculated all this last time. And then I added one story in there as well. And that story is probably the roughest of them all. My sister, who is reading my book, one of my beta readers, she pointed out that that's definitely one of my roughest chapters. I know it needs to be smoothed out more. So that is definitely going to be a main focus with draft 4, but we're still talking about draft 3. So at the end of that draft, I felt great. I like loved it. It was like, it's a story now. And I was even to the point where I really wanted to be like querying. I'm like, I could query this. And like I had to tell myself to chill. Like I knew that I still needed to line edit. Obviously, I'm not the best line editor. If we didn't have autocorrect, my book would be riddled with spelling errors. I'm horrible about spelling. I can write some good stories, but my spelling is still a little rough. I think a lot of it has to do with relying too much on autocorrect. But yeah, that's something that definitely has been checked a lot. But there's still like little things, you know, that you miss. Like you might read your chapter like 3 times before you move on to the next one, but there's still little things that you can miss because your mind bridges that gap of the mistake sometimes and then you don't catch it. So it definitely still needs work, but I feel so much more confident with it, and like the idea in itself and what is going on, I feel like could be sold a lot easier now, and it feels a lot more truer to what it was before. So it does feel way better, and that means the plot feels way better. Like I found what it was. Like I found the plot. It took 3 drafts, but I eventually found the plot of my book. That is kind of like the stats from draft 1 to 3 and like me finding the plot along the way. And I just wanted to sit down and talk to you guys about that. And then the other thing I wanted to do with you guys is go over the opening lines, like the first few paragraphs of each draft, and kind of like compare them a little bit and like how I feel about them now and like what is missing, and you could tell the differences between them. So let's do that real quick. We'll kind of have to read it off my phone. I apologize for not completely looking at the camera the whole time. I could try and memorize these, but I know I will mess it up anyway, so we're just gonna read it off of my phone. Okay, draft 1's opening is thwack. The literal sound and sensation of my head hitting my dad's passenger side window jolted me awake. Eyes blurry and mind a haze, I tried to be present in the world and take in my surroundings. The sound of Clearwater Revival's Susie Q was currently permeating the air of my dad's white Toyota Tacoma. The trees and mountains of the Rocky Mountains flew by the window, and my dad sat next to me in his usual getup of jeans, a ball cap, and a Carhartt sweater. Now that I remembered who I was and where I was, I blinked away the last of my brain fog. Midday naps were always so disorientating, especially when something unexpectedly wakes you up, like your head slamming against the glass window of your dad's pickup. It was quite literally an eye-opening experience. Any luck yet? I questioned my dad, more alive, but not quite bright-eyed and bushy-tailed. It's not horrible, but it literally starts with me waking up. You know, that's kind of a very controversial kind of opening, like very common opening. And at this point, I had not fixed me referencing to my dad as dad, capital D, because like that is what it needed to be, and it hadn't been fixed quite yet in this draft. I think I switched at some point, but I didn't go back and fix it in all of the chapters or all of the instances. So that was a big difference. It just wasn't the right place of where it should be, and it just did not feel right. So for draft 2, it changed to I picked my way around trees, shrubs, berry bushes, and deadwood as dad and I made our way down the mountain. The mile-long hike dragged on for what felt like forever. I made sure to not let his form disappear for long though. I didn't want to be left behind. No thank you. Gah. Why did the dogs have to tree so far away from the wheeler? Stupid. And all of them aren't even here either. I sighed, the air leaving my lungs. What if I just stopped breathing? Yeah. Wait, no. I shook my head, brushing off the horrid thoughts, and then dodged some branches away from my exposed face. I wanted to be here. I begged to be here, in fact. So I only had myself to blame for being in this mess. I mean, who convinces their dad to go hunting after lunch on a Wednesday? It spelled a mess waiting to happen. But I couldn't help it. I wanted to go bear hunting really bad. So much, in fact, fact that when he finally said yes, I about cried. I'd been begging to go for the last 2 years, basically ever since he took me lion hunting at age 7. Dad had held strong, especially after buying his business and starting to hunt in a whole new area of Idaho. He had to get his own bearings first after all, but I wore him down and got my wish today, both of us forsaking our responsibilities. Dad's need to fix some things around the house and school for me to go hunting. And so here we were, walking to my first bear tree ever at 9 years old, the four-wheeler long abandoned behind us. Obviously that one is still very info dumpy. There's not like a true hook, and the inner monologue is very overpowering in the first few paragraphs and completely like pulls you away. Like that was one of the things that my beta reader had pointed out. Didn't feel realistic to her. To me, like, I've always been like that when I'm hunting. You go through the highs and lows, you're like, why am I here and all that stuff. But I got what she meant and I completely changed it up. So it went from that to this for draft 3. So draft 3's opening is, with the cock of the hammer, Dad fired. Pop. I reflexively flinched, the scene before me disappearing behind my eyelids. Flames of heat burned up my neck, settling into my cheeks. My eyelids fluttered open, shame washing in with the world around me. I can't believe I just did that. Shit, Dad grunted. Eyes rocketing to the scene before me, I took in the all-out brawl that had broken loose only a few feet away. The bear that should have been dead stood with its back pressed against the tree, making a half circle back and forth, swiping out with a paw whenever a dog got too close. Spittle drizzled down its maw as it growled and gnashed its teeth. A pit formed in the bottom of my stomach. All it would take is one good swipe, and Molly, a 7-year-old female plot, or Smokey, a 7-year-old male blue tick, would be dead. They were Dad's top dogs at the moment, obviously, as none of the other dogs had made it to the tree. Rather, they were off running trash. Or another bear. But Dad was pretty sure it was trash. So we couldn't afford to lose them. Or the bear for that matter. I'd waited, very impatiently if I do say so myself, to see my first bear. So I wasn't about to let this one go. I'd begged Dad to shoot it only minutes earlier. Too excited to care that it was inching closer to sunset. That we didn't have a rifle. Or that we still had the rest of the hounds to collect before we could go home. No, none of it mattered. I wanted to see my first bear killed after all. So yeah, definitely feels a lot stronger. I know it could use some more line editing through it and a little bit of adjusting to some words to make it slightly more stronger. But the first few sentences specifically, like they just grab you right in. I'm starting with the action. We're completely just set in the hunt. It's not us chilling in the truck trying to get a race going. It's not us walking down to the tree. No, it's us at the tree with the dogs. Dad trying to get this bear killed because I basically begged him to kill it because it was the first one I'd ever seen treed and I wanted to see my first bear up close and personal, and he had to use a pistol because that's all we had. So I just drop you right in there and then give you some more information. I feel like it does pretty good. I feel like I could probably introduce Dad a little bit more, but it like cuts to that like the next paragraph or two. I introduce the 2 dogs that are there, a little bit about the bear, and then you get a little bit about me, but not so much info dump. So I feel like, yeah, we get dropped into some information about like why we were in this instance and what is going on, but I'm not dropping in every single detail about Dad, myself, and all that stuff. So I feel like it's pretty strong, and I did already get a comment from a beta reader that she loved the opening, so that is awesome. It makes me really happy that it feels so much better, and I do feel like chapter 1 is probably one of the best chapters. I feel like it's just that moment where like I had been wanting to go bear hunting for so long, and then I got that chance and I got to experience what that was like. We had a crazy experience, and then my dad taught me how to field dress a bear, and then I had to help him take the dogs back out of that tree. We had to walk all the way back to the 4-wheeler with our stuff. He had the bear and I had the dogs, and then we had to go get the other dogs, and yet at the end of the day I still wanted to go again, like despite the fact that we had to hike out of there by the light of the moon because we had no flashlights. And it was just one of my favorite hunts, and I loved that one very much. There's a couple other ones that I also really love, but I feel like that one is definitely one of the strongest to this point because I've edited it so much and I've tweaked it a lot. It's gone from like almost 7,000 words down to 2,000 and some odd words. It's definitely had a lot of progress made to it, and I'm very happy with it. I know it can still potentially change quite a bit, but I do like it at this moment. That's kind of everything I wanted to go over in this video. It's a little shorter than I was expecting. Right now it's like at 20 minutes for me, but I'll be probably cut down to a little less for you guys because I like to cut out all of my pauses and repetitive words like and but and anyways, because I love to say those things when I don't need to. So here I am trying not to say another one of those words. If you guys enjoyed this, please let me know and I can potentially do some more like chunks of reading favorite parts of my book, or just kind of do a little bit more of sit down videos. I am not the best at them. I've definitely gotten better at my talking in front of a camera. I've always been an introvert and it's kind of hard for me to talk in front of cameras, in front of people that I don't know, and just in general tend to stumble over my words really easily. My mind runs a little bit faster than my mouth, and so it like disconnects sometimes. So yeah, not the best speaker in the world, but I'm definitely getting better at it. So if you want to see more videos like this, please let me know, and maybe I'll plan some more in the future. Appreciate it if you made it to the end of this video. Maybe do some sort of reading emoji as I read to you these chunks of my chapter 1 from draft 1 to 3. I just hope you have a wonderful day. I guess I will see you guys next time for my next video. Yay! Bye!